Ayan, ayan. Kamusta naman kayo diyan, mga kameta? Yan, bago tayo, back on the move na naman tayo. Let me just say thank you so much sa mga friends natin sa double CCAP, double CAP for the kind invite kahapon. Bakit British accent yung Manila? Manila. Ba't British accent yung Yung pwede American or neutral accent lang. Ibang klase talaga British accent socially. But anyways guys, balikan natin ito. Um, Medyo malaking eyebags natin kasi maaga tayo nagising 5 a.m. pa lang. I had to finish some writings on the whole Trump trade wars and all. But shout out against the double CAP, yung mga kaibigan natin sa BPO industry for the kind invite kahapon to give a talk on geopolitics, on Trump trade war, US-China rivalry, and how the Philippines has to navigate it. So thank you so much again for that. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga, of course, sa mga kaibigan natin, followers natin, dito sa Cebu, sa Visayas region, ng mga others. Beautiful, really. Ang ganda talaga ng Cebu, ang ganda talaga ng Iloilo. I really love Visayas region. It's really a beautiful region. Um, as much as, of course, love na love natin na Siargao, Mindanao, and of course, our own very own Baguio City. But guys, let me talk about a couple of things before I head to my next destination. Medyo tuloy-tuloy lang tayo. God willing, later evening naman, samahan natin si Attorney Conti naman. Kagabi, hindi natuloy yung, I think there was a miscommunication, so hindi natuloy yung interview natin with Dr. Ronnie Holmes ng Pulse Asia, but hopefully we'll have him soon on our program to break things down, a couple of things. But let me just talk about a couple of things very quickly. No, unang-una, let me just say na there's this theory na negative world. It's a theological theory, not necessarily by a priest, but by this American conservative Christian thinker. He came up with this notion of negative world. Basically, an argument is that we don't live in a balanced world whereby good and evil are very much yin and yanging each other. And therefore, if you do good, either good will prevail on its own, or there's always enough good to cancel out bad. Basically, the idea of the negative world is that, unfortunately, yung mga puwersa ng kadiliman at kasamaan are already in the ascendancy. And indeed, meron liwanag sa dilim, but you have to fight for Team Liwanag sa dilim. And Team Liwanag sa dilim is in a besieged position. It's in a minority report position. It's in a defensive position. So you have to actively push back against kasamaan at kadaliman. So that's the theological notion of the negative world. Why is this relevant, guys, sa konteksto ng pinag-usapan natin? Basically, over the past 3 or 4 years, kanina lang nag-jogging ako with some folks, cybersecurity folk from the call center world, and tinanong sa akin, Richard, hindi ka ba na-intimidate, naiinis sa lahat ng mga bashings and attacks and all? And he could see in my face, parang nakasmile ako, parang, well, it's part of the business. But my reading was hindi na obra, guys, yung business as usual. Hindi na obra yung let's just have a marketplace of ideas, and let's just say, as long as you say the truth, it will prevail on its own. No, I accepted a long time ago. In fact, from the very day, I would say, na sinabi ko dun sa bottom line ni Tito Boy na uh, British, nakaka talaga distract ng British accent. I had I had enough of that in Heathrow. All right. Anyway, the idea of the negative world is that hindi obra yung business as usual approach to things. No, hindi obra yung let's just lay out the facts there and the voters will make the right decision, or let's just lay out the facts there and fact check and everything will be fine. No, you have to be proactive. You have to accept that kasama ng kadiliman ay nasa ascendancy na. So you have to be extremely unorthodox, proactive, even aggressive, even aggressive. So in that context, kaya nga sabi ko may pinost tayo the other day, and I think it resonated with a lot of people. I said, if you fight for the right values, if you're on the side of the Lord, right, you are automatically gonna be hated for those who are fighting for the wrong values. Or to put it less mildly, yung mga lumalaban para sa kasamaan at kadiliman. And unfortunately, marami sa ating mga kaibigan na lumalaban sa team kasamaan ng kadiliman, they're not even aware that they're on the wrong side of history because they're so down the rabbit hole, they're so down the disinformation algorithm, they're so down the personality cult tatay budol universe that they don't even know they're on the wrong side of history. Kaya nakikita mo yung ibang kaibigan natin na hindi troll, na hindi bayaran, talagang genuine people ay believe talaga dun sa narrative na, ay hindi, yung kay Angeles Santos, mga gano'n, mga ano yan, mga tanim biktima yan, yung mga gano'n kawalang yang disinformation na yan. Uh, so the thing is, we live in a world whereby disinformation is already in the driver's seat, that the dominant narratives are already dominated by purveyors of fake news, by bayaran trolls, and basically by proto-fascists, if not completely idiotic people, right? Let's just be honest about that. So that's the theory of the. So when you say negative world, you accept that the balance has already been tipped. And the balance was tipped because hinayaan natin yan, because tinamat tayo, because we didn't establish the guardrails, because we were complacent, because we thought, as long as we write the right columns, as long as, mainstream media is there, as long as there's fact checking, as long as there's academic world, everything's gonna be fine. So why is this relevant? So it's relevant because ako, natanggap ko na, matagal na, nung na-realize ko that the scale has tipped or talagang in favor of the dark side. Natanggap ko na it's inevitable na you're gonna be hated, attacked, and God forbid worse, and almost worse in our cases, in our case, once you start fighting for human dignity, human rights, civil liberties, and also economic justice, right? Because the thing is that ang kalaban natin ay hindi yung traditional conservative trapo fascism. It's a very different liminal protean kind of proto-fascism, alternative populism, right-wing populism, whatever you want to call it. I will call it just demagoguery, no? Very Greek, Socratic ang kritiko. It basically demagoguery. Eto mga 'to, mga budol na 'to, they make people believe na sila yung lumalaban sa mga oligarchs, sila yung lumalaban sa kasamaan, et cetera. But sa totoo lang, gumagawa sila ng sarili nilang oligarchs. In many cases, they are the perfect definition of oligarchs themselves. Yung tatlong anak ay nasa lahat ng posisyon, siya nasa kahit cardboard na, maging mayor pa rin, yung ganun. You get what, like, that's the classic definition of oligarch. The rule of the few, of one dynasty, and not a very good ruler, right? That's the classic definition of oligarchy. But anyway, what makes them very effective is that magaling sila mangbudol. That they present themselves actually as Robin Hood. When in fact, they are, to put in biblical terms, right? Uh, well, hindi naman sila sheep in the wolf's clothing eh. More like hyena in wolf's clothing. How can I put it? But you get my point, diba? We're up against this kind of enemy. So when you're up against this kind of enemy, guys, na napakalakas in terms of disinformation networks, na napakalakas online, social media, napakalakas ang grip on the human dark instincts, and having no qualms with exploiting that, it's inevitable, guys, na magkakaroon ka talaga ng a lot of backlash and pushback and wars. So natanggap ko na for a long time. Now, what is the secondary relevance of this? The secondary relevance of this is this. And you know, and I think this also goes to our friends in the academy, in the survey world. When our friends do surveys, I can vouch for the integrity of a lot of these folks. I mean, whether it's Dr. Ron Host, whom we hope to talk to soon, there are friends in Okta, WR Numero. These are great people, good people. These are solid academics. These are people with good heart. So kaya hindi talaga, we have to push back against yung mga Team Google trends. Yung mga ibang dilawan na toxic dyan, etc. Tama yung sinabi ni Percy kahapon eh. Tumulong talaga mga surveys na yan eh. Sa totoo lang, in terms of refining their strategy, in terms of targeting the most, I would say, receptive sections of the demographic, the voter demographic, and in the end, it worked for Akbayan. So, um, having said that, guys, we are in a negative world. So it means that when you conduct surveys, or in my case, when I say things, right, this also applies to me. When I say things, I have to automatically assume na pwede weaponize yan. So for instance, the other day, ang sinabi ko is, Parang the president made a big mistake to arrest the former president under ICC because, and then I explained, because walang follow through. Hindi mistake yung ICC arrest itself, pero mistake yung walang follow through na i-explain sa taong bayan bakit kailangan yung ICC arrest because nag-fail yung judicial institutions natin dahil libo-libo sa ating kababayan ang pinatay dahil ICC. Hindi kasi ginawa eh. But no, ang lumabas doon sa I don't know kung sinong nagki-clickbait dun, nilagay na, "Hey, Darian said mali yung ICC arrest." No. So what I did was I immediately contacted the editors. I immediately posted, or a little bit more than immediately kasi hindi ko nakita yung title nung una, eh. So kudos din sa mga kaibigan natin sa Academic World who flagged this to me. So I messaged the editors and immediately they fixed it. But unfortunately, already nakita natin yung ibang online fake news purveyors or yung mga kung ano nung gumawa na sila ng meme at nilagay yung mukha ko diyan at sinabi na Richard Adarna says the ICC arrest was a big mistake. When I was saying totally that tama yung ICC arrest pero dapat i-explain mas taong bayan. Do you get what I'm saying? So ako personally am aware. Now you have to be very careful when you say something na hindi ito ma-weaponize or ma-twist. That is precisely the context within which I made the sarcastic comments na baka isama na rin si Tevez sa mga surveys in terms of most trusted leader, precisely because I know from an academic standpoint, it makes sense to understand how much trust rating or political capital or resonance Dutertismo and literally former President Duterte has. I get it. It's perfect to have in a political science conference. Let's talk about this. Let's look at Dutertismo, its base, its resilience. But we're operating in a context na immediately nung lumabas yung survey na yan, na weaponize ito ng mga fake news purveyor, propagandists, among other people to basically argue that, oy, sikat pala si Digong. So ibig sabihin, ayaw ng tao ng ICCRS, ayaw ng tao ng accountability. Basically saying that, hindi, people are supporting essentially what Duterte did, right? So now weaponize yun. Kaya sabi ko, we have to be aware. If you are a voice of authority, whether you're a survey agency, whether you're a political thinker, whether both, right? You have to be always aware. And when you see na weaponize yung sinasabi mo, you have to correct them. You have to push back. You have to clarify, right? You have to make sure hindi na weaponize. Because of course, sometimes inevitably you have to say something, you have to say the truth. So you have to also make sure pag nag-weaponize, yung sinasabi mong katotohanan, you also push back against that. So yun yung konteksto. Because every time I posted anything about ICC or accountability in human rights, immediately ang pinopost ng kabila is, oh, highest approval si Digong, higher approval si Sara, gano'n. So ako, okay, I think we have to puncture that, narrative basically saying, "Oh, so tama lang ginawa ni Digong kasi popular siya, eh." I had to puncture that. So sarcastically sinabi ko, "Ayan, ilagay niyo lang si Tevez, si Harry Roque, si Kibuloy para kumpleto na, 'di ba?" Mukhang kung sinong walang trabaho yun pa yung high approval rating, 'di ba, or trust rating, 'di ba? So, do you get what I'm saying? It is precisely because we live in a negative world whereby anything that favors ting kasamaan and kadiliman will be automatically weaponized, even if it's factual and made in a well-intentioned manner, in a data-driven scientific manner. So I think it is our duty, whether we're academics, thinkers, etc., not only to be careful with what we say, because sometimes, we have best of intentions and then there's a slippage, there's whatever, misspeaking, whatever. But once you see it's being weaponized, you have to push back. You have to push back. And in my case, I push back using everything. I use humor, I use aggressive kung kanal, but also, you have to do 10 vlogs, 20 vlogs. Yung na-twist yung sinabi ko na HDI, I did like 20 vlogs after that to clarify, to push back, etc. Um, you know, because we live in a negative world, you have to fight back, you have to be proactive. Hindi pwede complacent tayo eh. So yun po yung konteksto na ating mga interventions. And that is my really advice dun sa ating mga kaibigan who have voice, who have platform. You have to be very careful. And if once they see their well-intentioned data and studies is weaponized, you have to push back against that. Or do not um resent other people who are pushing back against that weaponization. Do not take it personally because those other people are actually on the front line. Guess what? I don't represent any institution or organization. I don't have any organization basically. Yes, I work with this university, I work with that think tank, but basically I'm on my own. I am at the front line. And as a person who's on the very front line, I take all the heat and I push back still because that's the right thing to do in a negative world, right? Yun yung concept. Yun yung fundamental paradigm kasi which is driving my interventions. Eh. Now, on the last part, for today. Hopefully later on with Attorney Conti, we'll have more extensive discussion on Bato, on ICC, among others. But yesterday I was thinking about it. Um, Ayan, tingnan mo yung mga troll na ganito. Ayan, iyak na naman kayo diyan. Tapos, ayan. Oh, see, you can see already negative world. Case in point. But going back to this, guys. I was also thinking about it. General Torre, now PNP Chief Torre. Some people are saying, "Oh, baka Richard, you're parang simping and you're overexcited." Like, guys, I'm always happy when I see people who deserve to be promoted, people who deserve recognition get the recognition. Because you know what? Again, in this negative world, either budol, ma PR people get all the recognition, or I don't know, you know, totally the wrong people. And then the people who actually do the hard work either get demoted or don't get recognition. I hate that. I hate that. Kaya ako, even dun sa mga mabubuting tao na who get recognition, yeah, I'm happy that they get recognition. But sana recognize na hindi lang silang lumalaban. It's not like isa lang yung journalist sa Pilipinas lumaban kay Digong, for instance, in the past decade or whatever, right? But anyway, so either there are a lot of overrated stuff there or there's complete lack of recognition, whatever. So for me, merit matters, and recognition of merit is meritocratic. I appreciate that. It is in that context. As I said, I expect General Torre to do certain things, not only huliin yung mga alam niyo na sino mga yan, pero ayusin din sana security sector reform sa PNP. We're hoping those things will also happen. Yun din ang context natin. So as much as we're happy for his promotion, it's not like we're just gonna sit back and fanboy our way. No, we're gonna hope to encourage him. Hopefully, I'll have him on my TV program, on my podcast, among others, and push General Torre. Really encourage General Torre to do what is right para talaga yung dangal ng PNP ay bumalik at yung tiwala ng taong bayan sa PNP ay bumalik. Now, I was also thinking yesterday, it's quite a big deal for BBM. Despite anong ginawa ni ate, si ate kung ano nang ginawa para ibaba to put down si Torre, but still, BBM stood by him. I was also thinking, if you look at it, General Torre has this natural charisma, very fast thinker, nakakatuwa, very proactive, fit siya, God bless him. Very nimble, very brave, very courageous, very analytic. And yeah, ang laki ng ano niya, ang laki ng good vibes sa kanya ng tao, eh, like trending na siya on Google, every meme or every post about him, ang daming mga positive message. Of course, yung mga trolls, yung mga walang hiya, yung mga team kasamaan, kadliman, whatever, yung mga bayaran na propagandists, lahat yan, they're doing everything to bring him down, all of these horrible diwata jokes, all of these horrible, below the belt attacks. Pero wala eh, ang lakas talaga yung yung natural appeal ni ang lakas talaga ng natural appeal niya eh. So I was thinking, guys. Okay, patapos na tayo. I was saying, what is important, guys, to realize is actually General Torre, if he continues on this momentum and knock on the wood tayo. Yung mami ko kasi sabi ko, post ka ng post kay Torre, baka ma-evil eye. Sabi ko, relax ka lang ma. I'm just trolling the other side also. But going back to this, guys, I think if General Torre keeps his current momentum, at the very least, he could be a vice presidential material in 2028. He will be there until 2027, most likely, from what I understand. And that will perfectly place him in a position to campaign for 2028 as soon as he retires. Uh, because you have to basically campaign for 2020 the year before. And look at it, PBM doesn't have many good options for succession. I mean, of course, he can support Rafi Tulfo, but Rafi Tulfo is an independent-minded guy. He can support the Pinks, but the Pinks will still go after him on the Marcos dictatorship legacy and all, etc. Right? Because genuine na tao ang mga Pinks, right? All of us have been criticizing the Marcos dictatorship legacy at hindi natin nakalimutan yung ill-gotten wealth, among other things, right? At saka mga kaibigan natin na worst budget ever, team worst budget ever, they're gonna go after BBM, including those who work for BBM and then resign later on. Um, so BBM doesn't have many good options if you look at it. And the worst case scenario for him is makabalik ang mga Duterte at yayarin sila. So you can imagine that General Torre could be potentially one option in the succession plan. And General Torre, if he maintains his momentum, his charisma and all, he doesn't need to win 100% of votes. He doesn't need to win 60%. Even if he wins 25, 30, or even 40% of the votes, which is not impossible, he could be, let's not forget, he could be the second Mindanaoan president after Digong. He could be the first ever PNP chief turned president. It's not like Lacson didn't try, but Lacson gave you an idea na kung PNP chief ka, pwede mo i-push yan to the higher level. Yes, in the case of Timo, yung isang Timo na nakakapanalo rin. I mean, kahit ganong clown show, pwede rin maging senador. So, and then Mayor Magalong also is in conversation. I've seen some surveys where Magalong is even seen as potentially presidential or vice presidential. But so I think the idea of Torre, if ever stars align, being in the conversation for Project 2028, backed by BBM, and because he's also amenable to the pink, doesn't sound too crazy after all. And it makes perfect sense for BBM to support someone like him if he maintains that momentum. But for him to maintain that momentum, he has to get a lot of things right. And he has to ward off a lot of haters, a lot of trolls, a lot of horrible people. And he has to make a couple of other big moves, potentially arresting also for ICC a predecessor of his alam natin sino yan. So lots of interesting things to discuss. So on that note, thank you very much, guys. Maraming salamat and talk to you soon. God bless, guys. Yan. Sino yan? Anong nangyayari dito? Okay, bye-bye.